In a small, quiet part of the world, there lived a man who once worked as a scientist. He was not famous or well-known, just someone who loved to understand the world in ways most people could not. He spent his days studying tiny particles that move faster than light, things that no one else could see. But one day, everything changed for him in a way he never expected. This man was part of a secret project run by a group of people who wanted to build something powerful, something that could protect the world from dangers no one else could fight. The project was called Project Sentinel. It was supposed to be a great success, but it wasn't. Something went terribly wrong. During one experiment, there was a big accident. The room shook, machines sparked, and lights flashed wildly. When it was all over, the man was the only one left alive. But he was not the same anymore. The strange accident had changed him from the inside out. His body was now made of something new, something that could not be broken or hurt. It was as if he had become a human battleship, locked with a power that no one could explain. No one knew where he went after that. Some said he disappeared, others said he was hiding. He chose to stay away from people, far from cities and governments. He found a place in a cold, lonely land surrounded by mountains and ice where no one would find him easily. But even though he was alone, the world around him began to notice strange things happening. Machines started to stop working in faraway places. Satellites in space stopped sending messages. It was as if an invisible force was moving across the planet, something big and powerful. People who worked for governments and armies began to whisper about a new kind of weapon. They called it the quantum-locked human battleship. It sounded like a story from a comic book, but they were scared. They believed this powerful being could control energy and matter itself, and no one knew if he was friend or enemy. Despite the fear, the man stayed quiet. He didn't want to hurt anyone. He only wanted to live his life away from all the fighting and politics. But the world was not ready to let him be. One day, a group of drones, small flying machines sent by a secret organization, found the place where he was hiding. They did not know exactly what they were looking for. They only knew there was a threat. The drones attacked the hidden bunker where the man lived, hoping to capture him or stop him. What happened next shocked everyone. The man did not fight back with guns or weapons. Instead, his body used the strange power inside to protect itself. The drones were destroyed instantly by a burst of energy that no one could see or understand. It was like the very air around him had turned into a shield. Then, a message was sent to all the leaders of the world through every radio and internet channel. You tried to attack me. Now you will know what true power looks like. Do not come again. Suddenly the man was no longer a secret. Everyone knew he was real, and now many wanted to control him or stop him. Governments sent soldiers, spies, and scientists to find a way to deal with this new force. But none of their plans worked. The man had seen too much. He knew the world was changing. It was no longer about countries and borders. Instead, it was about companies and people who had more power than any government. They wanted to use his power for their own gain. He refused. He wanted peace, not war. But no one listened. The world was changing fast, and so was the feeling among people who held power. The strange energy bursts and signals weren't just accidents anymore. They were signs of something bigger, something no one fully understood. The man who had become the quantum-locked human battleship was no longer hiding. His existence was now a fact everyone had to face. The people in charge felt nervous and unsure. What if this power was too much for anyone to control? What if it wasn't just a man anymore, but a force beyond their understanding? They needed to know more, and they needed to find a way to deal with him. They sent their best teams armed with the latest technology and powerful weapons, hoping to find him. But this man didn't want to hurt anyone. He wasn't interested in fighting wars or being a weapon for anyone else's goals. He wanted peace. But that was a message most people in power were not ready to hear. As the tension grew, strange things began to happen around the world. Satellites stopped working, power grids failed, and strange pulses of energy caused disruptions everywhere. Some called it chaos, others called it a warning. The governments and big corporations started calling this man a threat. They believed his power could upset the balance of the entire world. They tried to find him by sending drones, spies, and agents into the cold, remote places where he might be hiding. One day, a group of drones arrived at the remote place where the man was believed to be. They moved silently, almost invisible in the icy air. Their mission was simple: find him and stop him before his power could grow any stronger. The man knew they were coming. He didn't want to fight, but he was ready to defend himself if necessary. When the drones attacked, something incredible happened. Without using any weapons, the man's body seemed to change. A force of energy spread from him so strong that it destroyed every drone in seconds. It was like the air itself was alive, protecting him like an invisible shield. The world's leaders were stunned. They had never seen anything like it before. This man was not just human anymore, he was something else. Something more powerful than anything they had ever created. Then, the man sent a message that everyone could hear on every radio and screen around the world. It was calm but firm. You attacked me first. Now you see what true power looks like. Do not come again. People everywhere were shocked. Some were afraid. Others were curious. But everyone knew one thing. This man had changed everything. The governments tried to reach out to him. They sent messages asking him to surrender, promising safety and protection. They wanted to study him to use his power to make themselves stronger, but the man refused. He had seen too much. He knew that many people in power were not interested in peace. They wanted control, and they would use him if they could. He stayed quiet for a while, watching the world around him. He wanted to find a way to help people, not hurt them, but the world was filled with people who saw him only as a weapon, a tool for their own goals. The man began to speak slowly to the world, not with anger, but with a warning. He told everyone that the power he held was too dangerous to be used by anyone who wanted to fight or control others. I do not want to be your enemy, he said, but I will not be your weapon. People listened carefully. Some began to understand. Others ignored his words. The tension between him and the powers that ruled the world grew. Meanwhile, the man moved quietly. He studied what was happening in the world from far away. He watched wars, conflicts, and fights over resources. He saw the damage people caused to the earth and to each other. He wanted to stop all of it, but he knew he could not do it alone. The world's leaders, now more fearful than ever, started to prepare for something bigger. They formed secret teams, combining soldiers, scientists, and the latest machines. Their mission was clear: capture the man, or if necessary, destroy him. But none of their weapons worked. Every time they tried, the man's power grew stronger. He could absorb energy, control forces that no one understood, and protect himself in ways no machine could break. Even when the teams surrounded him, ready to fight, the man showed something unexpected. Instead of violence, he showed mercy. He stopped fighting before anyone was hurt. He only warned them. Stop this, he said quietly. There is another way, but many did not listen. They saw him as a threat that had to be controlled no matter the cost. The man realized something important. This power inside him was not just for defense. It was a chance for change. A chance to show the world that power did not have to mean destruction. He decided to take a stand. Not with weapons or armies, but with a message of peace and strength combined. He reached out to the people in secret ways. To those who wanted to understand, he shared ideas about a future without war, without fear. A future where power was used to protect, not to harm. Slowly, some began to believe him. They saw that this power, so strong and strange, could be a force for good. But the people who held power in the old way, those who wanted control and fear, were not ready to give up. The battle for the future was just beginning. The world had now seen what he could do. He wasn't a rumor anymore. Not a story or secret file. He was real, and his power was far beyond anything anyone had imagined. Governments had tried to capture him. Machines had tried to destroy him. Nothing worked. He didn't fight to win. He didn't fight to kill. He only defended himself. And even then, he did it with control. Calmly, almost gently, like someone who understood the weight of his strength. But that scared people even more, because power that doesn't obey a power that doesn't follow orders is the kind of power those in charge fear the most. After the failed drone attacks and energy bursts that shook satellites and defense systems, a meeting was called behind closed doors. The most powerful minds in military, science, and politics sat together, looking at a single screen. On that screen was a frozen image. A man standing in the middle of a glacial field, hands at his sides, calm as the sky. Around him, the remains of machines lay shattered, not by bombs, not by bullets, but by a force no one could explain. A new plan was made that day. A plan they called Operation Gravity Chain. This wasn't like the others. This time they didn't send simple machines or soldiers. They gathered their best, people trained not just in combat but in science, quantum tech, and tactical energy control. These were enhanced units, people and machines working together. They were given one mission: bring him in alive. Not to ask him, not to talk, but to take him. What they didn't know was, he was already waiting for them. He didn't hide this time. He didn't run. He stood in the center of a frozen basin deep in the north, where the wind howled like a warning. He stood alone, wearing no armor, holding no weapons, just a simple figure, still and quiet while the snow fell around him. The strike team arrived with precision. Aircraft flew above without sound. Robots walked through ice without leaving tracks. They circled him from every side. They believed he had no chance. One against so many. But what they didn't understand was, the more they pushed against him, the stronger his energy became. The moment they moved in, the air around them began to shift. It was small at first, like the cold had stopped moving. Then their equipment started to blink. Red lights, warnings, error messages. Time itself felt slower. Their voices over the radio began to stretch like echoes in a tunnel. The man didn't lift a hand. He simply looked at them, calmly, not with anger, but with a kind of sadness. They opened fire. Beams of energy, heavy rounds, bursts of charged light. It all flew toward him like a wave. But none of it touched him. It froze in the air, right in front of his body, held in place by something no one could see. Then, without warning, the energy reversed direction, not to destroy, not to harm, but to stop. The weapons powered down. Machines shut off. People dropped to their knees, not out of pain, but because they simply couldn't move. The team didn't die. No one was hurt, but they were stuck, locked in place as if time had forgotten them. For hours, the battlefield remained silent. Then slowly, each soldier and machine was released. They stood up, confused, shaken. Their memories were clear, but their hearts felt heavy. They had never experienced anything like that before. Not fear, not pain, but a presence that made them question everything they believed about power. Then his voice came through every device they carried. I am not your enemy. I don't want control. I don't want to rule, but I won't be hunted. And just like that, the signal cut off. Their gear worked again. The snow started falling as if nothing had happened. And he was gone. The soldiers returned, but something in them had changed. They were trained to fight, built to be strong. But now they carried a story that would never leave them. Of a man who could have destroyed them, but didn't. A man who held more power than all of them combined, but chose peace instead of war. Back at command centers around the world, questions grew louder. Who was this man, really? How did he survive the accident? Why did he walk away from the world and hide? And most importantly, why wasn't he fighting back? People began to talk. Some said he was a threat. Others said he was a gift, something rare in a world that always chooses war before peace. For the first time, the world was divided not by country or belief, but by how they saw him. Some leaders wanted to try again. Bigger weapons, smarter tech, faster drones. Others said no. They remembered what happened to the last team. Not just the defeat, but the feeling. That strange calm, that mercy, that message: he doesn't want to rule, but he won't be hunted. Those words began to appear across forums, secret chats, and even public posts. People were starting to see that he wasn't just powerful, he was different. And different was what the world needed now. But fear is hard to let go of, especially when it's mixed with pride. In a boardroom filled with sharp suits and colder hearts, a decision was made. Not to fight him with weapons, but with stories. They began to spread rumors that he was unstable, that his power was growing beyond his control, that one day he might not stop himself. The goal was simple: turn the people against him before they could see the truth. But the man was already ahead of them. He didn't respond with anger. He didn't send more warnings. Instead, he went silent. And when the world stopped hearing from him, they started to worry. Because sometimes silence is louder than any weapon, and they knew he was still out there, somewhere, watching, waiting, not to attack, but to remind them that true power isn't about who can destroy the most, it's about who chooses not to. The world was changing fast, but many people still didn't understand the full story behind the man they called the quantum-locked human battleship. Rumors and fear had grown stronger, and some wanted to paint him as a danger to everyone. But the truth was very different. Long ago, before the accident that changed him, this man had made a choice. He was part of a secret experiment, something meant to protect people from a terrible disaster. Scientists had been working on a weapon that could control space and time, things that seem impossible to most of us. But during the experiment, something went wrong. A powerful energy explosion happened, and the world thought it was a failure. Many believed no one survived, but he did survive. And he survived because his body changed in a way no one could understand. Instead of breaking, his body fused with the energy. He became something new, not just a man, but a living force. For years after, he stayed hidden. He didn't want to be a weapon or a tool for anyone. He only wanted to keep the world safe from the dangers that the experiment had almost caused. But governments and corporations saw him differently. They saw power. They saw a chance to control something they never could before. One day, a secret group of people who wanted to keep the truth hidden made their move. They tried to attack the place where he lived, sending drones and soldiers to capture him. But their plan failed. The man used his power to protect himself without hurting anyone. He showed mercy instead of violence. He sent a message that was heard all over the world. "You attacked me." I responded, "Do not try again." After that, the world started to listen. Some people became afraid. Others became curious. But very few knew the real story, what had happened during the experiment and why the man was different now. Then, something unexpected happened. Someone leaked old files to the public. These were documents that had been hidden for years, locked away by governments and powerful companies. The files showed the details of the secret experiment and the accident. They told a story of a man who had volunteered to protect millions of people, even if it meant risking his own life. People began to see him not as a threat but as a hero, a man who had saved many from a disaster no one else could stop. In an unexpected move, the man decided to speak to the world, not in person, but through a message sent on every channel available, television, radio, and the internet. He used a calm and clear voice that was almost peaceful but full of strength. "I did not choose this power," he said, "but I will choose how to use it. I do not want to rule or fight. I want peace." He gave the world a challenge. He said that all the programs and weapons that tried to control energy like his own should be stopped. If the leaders didn't stop making those weapons, he would stop them himself. Many people were shocked. This was not the behavior of a typical weapon or a dangerous force. This was someone trying to save the world from itself, but not everyone was happy to hear this. Powerful groups who had invested in these secret weapons didn't want to give up. They refused to listen. They continued to build their machines and prepare for war. At the center of this resistance was a huge company that controlled much of the world's technology. They had machines that could think faster than any human, weapons that could destroy cities, and even plans to send machines into space to control energy from above the Earth. They believed they could stop the man. They believed their machines were stronger than any person. One day, this company created a machine that could open a black hole, a small artificial one designed to swallow anything nearby. They planned to trap the man inside it, thinking he could never escape. When the machine was ready, they sent it into a remote place in the ocean, far from any city. They hoped it would be a trap, but the man knew their plan. He didn't hesitate. He went to the place where the black hole was opening. What happened next was unbelievable. Instead of being pulled into the black hole, he walked into it. No one could believe it. People watched as the man entered the swirling darkness and didn't disappear. Instead, he began to control the black hole with his own power, stopping it from growing and turning it into harmless energy that spread safely in the sky. The company was shocked. Their biggest weapon had failed. Moments later, the man appeared inside their headquarters, not with weapons, not with anger, but calm and peaceful. He told them simply, "It's over." The leaders had no choice but to listen. They realized that no weapon was stronger than the man who controlled energy with his own body and mind. After this, the man decided to create something new. He did not want to control people, but he wanted to make sure no one could ever use weapons like these again. He built a system, an invisible shield around the world. It was a system that would stop any attempt to create dangerous energy weapons. This system was open for all to see, free for anyone who wanted peace. He called it Protocol Lock. With Protocol Lock in place, the world began to change. People stopped fighting over weapons that could destroy everything. Nations started talking more. The fear that had held the world captive began to fade. The man returned to his quiet life, far away from the cities and the noise. People didn't see him anymore, but they knew he was watching, always watching. Sometimes when the wind was still and the night was quiet, people said they could hear a soft hum in the air. It was the sound of protocol lock working, protecting the world, and if someone ever tried to use power for harm, that hum would grow louder, because the world remembered what happened when they tried to challenge the quantum-locked human battleship. They submitted. After the world saw the man control the black hole and stop the most dangerous weapon ever created, many thought the story was over. But it wasn't, not yet. In fact, it was just beginning to take a new shape. The man had done something no one expected. He had not only stopped war machines but had created a new way for the world to stay safe. His invisible shield, called Protocol Lock, was unlike anything seen before. It was not a weapon or a barrier. It was more like a promise that energy would only be used to protect life, not destroy it. As the days passed, more and more people began to believe in this promise. Slowly, the fear that had held nations apart started to disappear. Countries that once prepared for war began to talk to each other. Instead of building weapons, they began to build schools, hospitals, and clean energy projects. But not everyone trusted the change. Some powerful groups, those who had made money from war and fear, saw Protocol Lock as a threat to their control. They wanted to bring the man back, not as a protector, but as a prisoner, a weapon to use for their own gain. These groups began to spread lies. They said the man was dangerous, that he was watching everyone all the time, and that he could control people's lives with his power. They created stories that scared many, hoping to turn public opinion against him. But the man did not respond with anger. He stayed quiet, watching from the shadows, always ready to protect, but never forcing anyone to believe him. Meanwhile, people started to notice small changes in the world. The air felt cleaner. The water became clearer. Animals returned to places they had left long ago. It was as if the earth itself was healing. The man's power wasn't just about energy or force. It was about balance. It was about understanding that the world was alive and that humans were part of it, not separate from it. This new balance attracted attention beyond just the governments and corporations. Scientists, artists, teachers, and everyday people began to feel the change. They started to talk about hope instead of fear. They created groups focused on peace and sustainability. They looked for ways to live together without fighting over power. The man saw this and felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. One day, in a quiet village far from cities and technology, a group of children played near a river. They didn't know the story of the quantum-locked human battleship. They only knew that the world around them was different. They felt safe, happy, and free. The man watched them from a distance. He remembered what it was like to be young and carefree before everything changed. He knew he couldn't go back to that time, but he could help build a future where children like these could live without fear. But peace is not easy. It requires care, trust, and sometimes sacrifice. One night, the man received a message from a group that called themselves the Keepers of Balance. They were a small but powerful group of people who had dedicated their lives to protecting the earth and its people. They asked for his help. The world was still full of hidden dangers. Some machines and weapons were still being built in secret. Some leaders still wanted to use fear and control to keep their power. The Keepers believed that only the man with the quantum power could stop these hidden threats once and for all. He agreed. Together, they started a quiet mission, not one filled with battles or noise, but with careful work, listening and understanding. They found places where dangerous machines were being made and stopped them without violence. They helped communities who were struggling to rebuild after years of fear and war. They shared knowledge about how to use energy safely, how to live in balance with the earth. The man became a symbol, not of power, but of responsibility. People started to write stories about him, not as a hero or a weapon, but as a guardian who used his power not to rule but to protect, a guardian who reminded everyone that true strength comes from peace, kindness, and respect. The world was far from perfect. There were still challenges, disagreements, and moments of fear. But with the man's presence, people believed that change was possible. They believed that a future without fear was not just a dream, but a real possibility. And so the man continued his journey, always watching, always ready. Not as a fighter, but as a protector of hope. He knew that power was not about control, it was about choice, and he chose peace. The story had come far from the beginning. The man once seen as a mysterious power had become something more. He was no longer just the quantum-locked human battleship, a force to be feared or chased. He was a symbol of hope, peace, and strength through kindness. Yet even with all that change, the man knew his journey was not finished. The world was still full of questions, challenges, and moments that would test everything people had come to believe. He had watched how the world slowly healed after protocol lock was put in place. He had seen how people began to believe in peace instead of fear. But peace was fragile, like a thin glass waiting to be strengthened. So, he chose to keep moving forward, not with force or power, but with understanding. One day, far from the cities and noisy places, the man found himself standing on a hilltop looking at the horizon. The sun was rising, painting the sky with colors of orange, pink, and purple. It was a quiet moment, but it felt full of meaning. He thought about the people who had fought and suffered in the past. He thought about the fear and the pain that had driven the world to the edge of destruction. And he thought about the future, a future where people could live without fear of war or violence. He realized that his power, as strong as it was only part of the solution. The real change came from people, from their choices, their kindness, and their willingness to believe in something better. The man wanted to help those choices grow. He began to travel quietly, not as a hero with great power, but as a teacher and listener. He visited villages, towns, and cities. He met with people from all walks of life: farmers, teachers, scientists, artists, and children. He listened to their stories, their dreams, and their fears. He didn't speak much about his power. Instead, he shared lessons about balance, respect, and hope. He showed people how small actions, like caring for the earth, helping neighbors, or choosing peace over conflict, could change the world. Slowly, people began to feel that change in their own lives. Communities became stronger, people helped each other more, and the energy of fear and hate began to fade. But there was one thing the man never forgot. Power, when used without care, could still cause great harm. He knew that there were still those who wanted to use fear and violence to control others. So he created a new promise. Not just a shield like protocol lock, but a promise for everyone, that power must always be used with responsibility and kindness. This promise spread through the world like a quiet wave. Schools began to teach about peace and responsibility. Leaders started to talk about cooperation instead of conflict. Even old enemies found ways to work together for the good of their people. The man watched this with quiet satisfaction. He knew the road ahead was long and full of challenges, but he believed in the power of hope. One night, as he sat by a small fire in a quiet forest, a group of children approached him. They didn't know who he was or the story behind his power. They only knew he was kind and calm. They asked him questions about the stars, the earth, and why some people fought while others loved peace. The man smiled gently. He told them a story not about battles or power, but about a world where everyone could live safely, happily, and freely. He said, "True strength is not about how much power you have. It's about what you choose to do with it. You don't need to fight to be strong. You just need to be kind, to help others, and to believe that peace is possible." The children listened carefully. Their eyes were wide with wonder and their hearts were open. And in that moment, the man knew that the future was in good hands. He had fought many battles, faced many dangers, and carried a power beyond imagination. But the greatest victory was not the power itself. It was the hope, kindness, and peace he had helped bring to the world. The quantum-locked human battleship was no longer a secret or a weapon. He was a guardian of the world's future, and as the sun rose higher, lighting the path ahead, he walked forward, ready for whatever came next. Because in the end, true power is not about control or fear. It is about love, hope, and the courage to choose peace every day.